I'd like to address your question with a very clear statement. Look at Greta Thunberg when she did the climate walk recently. It wasn't her that erupted it, right? That movement has been around for over 40 years. Al Gore came out with global warming when he was running for president, even before that. So I think what's happening is when young people take a voice, it makes it make sense because you have people challenging bureaucracy. And that's really the problem with America as a whole. It takes us 10 times longer to make a decision, but it takes an instant to react to a moment, right? So like look at Sandy Hook, right? When that happened, that was a moment that people had to react to. They couldn't plan for that. You couldn't have town hall meetings for that, right? So when you look at American institutions adapting to change, it's really a bigger question of how do we eliminate bureaucracy and empower everyone with basic decision making, right? And that doesn't come from just having a vote in who we elect as officials or who do we donate to or how do we, what church do we go to? It goes a bigger solution, which is really around how do we fellowship with one another to actually create local bodies that actually address these issues. And one of the biggest ways that people have done that, you look at when Trump was trying to erect the oil in a very sovereign land of the Native Americans here in America, right? One of the things they did was they locked arms. They refused to allow people to enter their land, right? And they did that as a community. They stuck out for days. People stopped going to school. It disrupted their whole economy because the problem was that big. So it's like we cannot normalize the problems we're going through and treat it as a bureaucratic decision. It becomes a community decision, and that's why you see people rebellion that's pretty much younger than all of us here, or around that sentiment.
And yeah, I think I would add to that I do think, and you've heard this from all of us, that this idea of more local engagement, more community voice, really seems to be one of the most powerful things that we can tap into using technology, using the demographic changes that are going on. The first thing you have to do, though, is you have to come together. You have to start talking to your neighbors again. And the truth is that corporate capitalism, the industrial age, and what that did was really great for 100 years. I mean, it really has brought a lot of people out of poverty, particularly in nations like this one. But like all things, it's a cycle that is starting to change. And so what we're really struggling with, I believe, is understanding what's important, what has value. What are we going to say is worth working for and not working for? And that's the moment that we're in right now. As we also deal with things like all of this new technology and, oh yeah, by the way, the planet's burning up. So it's really tough to do that, but until we sit down and have those honest questions as a community and say, this is what matters to us, this is what's really, really important, that's when you start to get at the root causes, I think, of some of these problems we're dealing with. Those are tough conversations, but it takes people like you starting by doing what you're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, we're not resigned to anything, right? Even though it feels like it. And I think a lot of times when we think about the future, we extrapolate the present, and if things feel chaotic, then we think that it's always going to be chaotic, right? And I also think it's human nature to talk about the things that we don't want or find distressing. So when we start to say, how might the future be different, and in what ways can I pin down a preferred future and articulate that becomes really, really challenging, both in our personal lives, for our community, for our learning communities especially. So I don't know what the solution is, right? I think we are in a time of deep transition where things feel very destabilizing. I do know that education can play a role in shaping this narrative, and I think when you dig deep and start to do that visioning work, and think about how do you create a culture of learning in a school climate that allows for your young people and your students to have a conversation about these issues, for them to develop their ideas for preferred futures, and then to have really the agency to advocate for them. Education's in a position to lead from the front from this. And so I just wanted to challenge everybody that as destabilizing and as really stressing as these times are, when you start to form those visions, be aspirational, be bold. Think about the role that your learning community and your school can play, with developing narratives around healing and making students more resilient. Maybe a less transactional experience. Again, I think this has knock-on effects throughout all of society.